Welcome everyone to your Trickiest Audit Questions Answered, the second of 4 live sessions at Exemplar Global's online Auditor Expo. I'm your host, Mike Richmond. These live sessions are going to delve into relevant topical areas and allow you, our viewers, to interact directly with our subject matter experts in real time. And for this session, we are joined by not one, not two, not one or two, but 3 outstanding panelists, Mel DeGregorio, Rick Litz, and Marco Parnave. But before I introduce you to Mel, Rick, and Marco, let's quickly set the ground rules. This session, as you might have gathered from the title, is intended to put our experts at your disposal to answer questions that you may have about unique and or challenging audit situations that you may encounter. To post a question for our panel, simply send it to us via the discussion forum box that's right there on your screen. Also note that this session is being recorded and will be made available on demand. So if you are watching the recorded version and you have a question that you'd like to submit to our panel, please email it to my colleague Jane Bowler at jbowler@exemplarglobal.org. That's JBOLER@exemplarglobal.org. And then we'll, of course, forward your question onto Mel, Rick, and or Marco. So without further ado, let's get to our panelists. Mel DeGregorio is the owner of Green Up Academy and Green Up Consultants. She is an internationally accredited third-party lead auditor by Exemplar Global for ISO 14001, ISO 45001, ISO 9001, RC 14001, and environmental, health, and safety regulatory compliance audits. Mel has 18 years of experience in the EHS and manufacturing world. In addition to her role as a consultant, lead auditor, and lead facilitator at Green Up, she was a corporate EHS manager for Tyco International Division, air pollution control engineer at the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, and production resource environmental coordinator at Frito-Lay. Rick Litz is the founder and president of Litz Quality Technologies, Inc. Rick has many years of corporate, manufacturing, and consulting experience. He is an Exemplar Global Quality Management Systems Registered Lead Auditor, a Probitus Authentication AS9100 Aerospace Experienced Auditor, and an IAQG Qualified AS9100 Aviation, Space, and Defense Auditor. Rick has been a member of and the AS9100 subject matter expert on a committee to protect impartiality for an international QMS registrar. He is an expert representative for the U.S. Technical Advisory Group to ISO PC 302 for ISO 19011-2018. Marco Parnave has collaborated with international companies, including Chrysler Corporation, Cotechna Quality Resources, Dynacorp Corporation, and the National Institute of Nuclear Energy, and Global Supplier Progress, Inc. He's a delegate for the U.S. Technical Advisory Group for ISO PC 302 for ISO 19011-2018. He is also a chief or delegate of the Mexican and United States delegations for the following ISO committees: ISO TC 176 on quality management, ISO TC 207 on environmental management, ISO TC 215 on health informatics, and ISO IEC JTC1 on data security. To start us off, Rick, Mel, and Marco are going to briefly share a bit more about themselves and their career. So Mel, you are up first, and I'm going to throw it over to you and let you go off and running. Take it away, Mel.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you for having me in this panel with these 2 exquisite gentlemen. I am very excited to be here. And so let me give you just a bit more details. As Mike mentioned, I'm the owner of Green Up Academy and Green Up Consultants. My background is in chemical engineering, and I'm proud to be a part of 2 wonderful organizations, Exemplar Global and PCB. I'm certified by PCB as a senior lead auditor also, in addition to Exemplar, and certified by them as a trainer. I think my about 18 years of experience, where I got lucky, it was to see all the different facades of the EH&S and manufacturing world, having a regulatory role, industrial role, operations role. And then basically about 12 and a half, 13 years ago, when I decided to cross to the dark side and became a consultant, that kind of added all the facades, I think. Hence, Green Up Consultants was born. Maybe if you can move to the next slide. So Green Up Consultants was a full-blown environmental health and safety consulting, training, and auditing company up until 2019. And after that, we decided to focus solely on audits And basically, we conduct EHS regulatory compliance audits, management systems, internal audits, or any specified client audits. If you want us to go check on your suppliers, vendors, etc., we do these kind of audits at this point. Next slide, please. So in 2016, I thought it would be a good idea to dedicate a whole other entity to address the environmental health and safety training need of the industrial, commercial, and government entities. Hence, Green Up Academy was born. I'm really excited with Green Up Academy also because Green Up Academy is an Exemplar global recognized training provider. And also we very recently became a PCB North America partner, and we increased our array of training sessions, whether these are ISO lead auditor, from internal auditor to foundation, and also environmental health and safety regulatory compliance webinars. And that's what we've been focusing on at this point. And next slide. So that's all from me for right now. And you can see my contact info here. And you can visit us at greenupacademy.com or greenupconsultants.com. And feel free to reach out. I love hearing from everybody. And if you have any questions or chat about ISO, EHS, whatever, I can talk endlessly about these topics anyways. I have a life, I promise. Thank you, Mike, so much. Back to you.
Thank you, Mel. That's great. I appreciate that. And we'll be back at you very shortly later in the session with some questions for you. So let's turn it over now to Rick Litz. Rick, you are up.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate the kind words at the introduction and appreciate the opportunity to participate in this panel. And following Mel, it's a hard act to follow. But again, appreciate it. So when I started this quality consulting business in 1997, I have worked for Pratt & Whitney Aircraft in the engine, compressor, and vibration groups, and worked for York Borg Warner Transportation Group, designing, testing refrigeration units go on front of tractor trailers or on containers that go on ships. And then I worked many years for SKF Bearings. Was involved in applications engineering for aviation defense machine tools. Also ran a corporate metrology laboratory. Was involved in setting up audit programs, worldwide audit program here in the United States, auditing manufacturing plants, warehouses, sales organizations, those types of things. And was involved in a turnaround business for them. And once the business was turned around, the business was sold. And at that time, I needed something different to do. Be involved in turnaround a business. There's a lot of pressure, stress, and activity. So I needed something different to do. So I started this consulting business 24 years ago. And as Mike said, Exemplar Global lead auditor for environmental quality and medical device, and also involved in aviation-based defense. Also ASQ certified engineer, quality engineer, and auditor. Was member of the ASQ board of directors for 2 terms, serving as regional director. And it's been very exciting, learned a lot, and quite interesting. So next slide, Mike, please. So the business is actually registered to ISO 9001 2015. So I'm faced with not only helping organizations implement and audit, but faced with the same types of issues that any organization is faced with being registered certified. The business is focused in 3 areas: consulting and all kinds of management systems, training and all kinds of quality techniques, geometric dimensioning tolerancing, mechanical blueprint drawing, reading, those types of things, as well as auditing. And like Mel's business, we are an Exemplar Global recognized training provider. And contact information is below, and feel free to reach out, questions that you have. Back to you, Mike.
And thank you also, Rick. And we'll be back at you as well with questions coming up. We're already starting to get a few of them coming in here over the
Okay.
transom. So Marco, why don't you take it away? Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your business.
Okay, like the first about 50 years of experience. So this is a very brief things about me. Basically, everything starts since I was taking a intensive course first in Japan with Dr. Kaoru Ishikawa about the QC cycles and total quality management. And then after that, Dr. Ishikawa decided to hire me for 3 years, and I got a specialization on quality engineering. From there, I moved to Chrysler. Later we are going to see a little bit ahead, and start working in the automotive industry. But in a general way, I have been teaching for more than 30 years in 6 different countries, and we have been specialized basically in risk assessment with cybersecurity and telecommunication from the last 10 years, focused specifically in anti-bribery, anti-corruption. As you've seen all over the world, this is a very common word. So it's hard to implement, but when you get the benefits of this system is so incredible, because the most important of this type of management system is to bring back the money to the population. So the other one, on the professional achievement, I have been VP operation, director, manager, consulting, assessor, auditor, trainer, and certification manager of Chrysler Corporation, in Diaper Corporation from the aerospace, global supplier programs for consulting and training, and certified training provider, CQR as a director of certification in a certification body, and as a freelance, I'm auditor of third party in INOR, AFNOR, and some cases in JUICE, Japanese Renaissance Engineering. And I have been auditing to the nuclear plants. I started auditing in Mexico, and I created an organization, we call it World Council Anti-Bribery Methods. Is only to show results of the implementation of the ISO anti-bribery, anti-corruption. Based on that, I have to, since before I start the ISO management system, I was invited to participate and to create the first meeting of the ISO. So I started working in that since 1980. And I have been member now for IF ISO 9001 Auditing Practice Group, as well US TAG in LAC, DGE, and the committees of TC 302, as well ISO TC 176, ISO 207, ISO 215, and the Spanish Translation Task Force in CASCO, that we were the first one that we suggest to translate all these standards in different languages. So the first group that we create was the STF, and we start making these standards in different languages. Can you, by the way, and I wrote some different books when I was working for Chrysler, and I couldn't publish after 25 years. I already passed those 25 years, but we started writing the first book of failure mode and effect analysis, quality function deployment, SPC, the 5S, all of these statistical techniques. Now everybody knows and are very important in order to measure the effectiveness of any management system. Basically, this is the general overview of 50 years of experience, and we are ready to try to receive your questions. And the biggest thing for me, that they make many changes. As I'm physics mathematician, the first one, and I have some master's degrees. But this one, the most important here, what that changed my life was when I found by accident, I started taking a course with Dr. Kaoru Ishikawa, and they took me to start working with him. It was 3.5 years. It was incredible. I learned a lot about him. And then Mr. Lee Iacocca from Chrysler, they got They got all the team. We hired all the team from Japan to Highland Park and implemented the first big standardization in the world. So in every plant, we have about 7 different models, 10 models with 10 platforms. So we make the first standardization when we got from 10 to 3 platforms, and with 3 platforms, we can make 7 different models. So one of the biggest success. So I'm very proud of that one. I'm very proud because I learned a lot. At the only thing now, our commitment is to try to teach or to let them know everything that we learn from those persons, and to deploy all the knowledge. And this is one of the most important things of this seminar, to deploy the knowledge based on our experience. Thank you. Here you have my data is MA Part Data, gsprogress.org, or www.gsp2go, and the telephone number, and in Exemplar Global, I'm training provider too of Exemplar Global, and an auditor of Exemplar Global. I guess that's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Marco. Excellent. Dr. Ishikawa, the founder of the fishbone diagram, correct?
Yeah, the Ishikawa diagram.
That's right. Amazing. Wonderful experience. That's great. Well, I'm going to stop the share because we're going to now turn it over to some Q&A for our team. We have a couple questions coming in already from the audience. But before we turn it over to the questions coming in, just to remind you all again, if you do have a question for our panel, just type them into the discussion forum box that's right there on your screen. Our team in the back end will get them and send them to me, and then I will ask some of our wonderful panelists. So just go ahead and do that anytime. You have another 40 minutes or so on this session, so we have plenty of time for questions. But before we get to the ones from our audience, I have one of my own, and of course this is your trickiest audit questions answered, and I'm sure many of our viewers have tricky audit questions, but we have some great experience on this panel, as we just heard. So what have been some of the interesting or tricky or funny or unique situations that you've encountered with people? You're all smiling. So Mel, you've got a big smile. Why don't you get started and let us know some tricky questions you've had.
I have one. I mean, it was a quite entertaining situation. Not for all involved, but I'll tell you. So I think I was doing an ISO 14001 audit, a registrar certification audit at a really large facility. And I was the lead auditor, and I had a couple other team auditors. And so we just completed the opening meeting, and then we're going to go on to site tour to tour the plant. So the environmental specialist, when we were leaving the conference room, I think he was just trying to break ice, or maybe he was just so nervous. I don't know. But so he comes, and right about I'm stepping outside of the conference room, he goes, "Mel," like, "Yes." "So you're the lead auditor?" I'm like, "Yes." But in my head, I'm thinking, well, haven't I just finished the opening meeting? Yes, I am. And then he goes, "Well," he looks at me, and "You look like an admin." I'm like, oh dear goodness, this is wrong. It's so many different levels. I'm like, I kind of tried to get offended. It didn't work. It was just, I was more sad for the guy. The plant manager was right next to him. He was about to remove his existence from Earth. Basically, he was just so mad. And then the second he pronounced the words, though, I mean, he was so worried, and I kind of enjoyed the different color changes of the face. So that was like really funny. It all went well afterwards, but it was hilarious.
Well, that happens. I mean, that happens. People get nervous. People get nervous at audits. I'm sure, gentlemen, I'm sure Rick, Marco, you've encountered people that you've audited who've been very nervous and said things they shouldn't have said, maybe.
I guess everyone has nervous. Either now, every one of the three of us, we have a stress because it's a big respect to be in front of many people. So, right? Every time we make a presentation, we learn. Every time that we make an audit, we learn.
Absolutely.
It's learn and learn. That is not true. That is, we are not feel on stress. That is not true. This is part of the exciting things to become auditor or to be a speaker.
So Mike, during an audit one time, speaking with senior leadership, was speaking to one of the managers, and during the audit, asking questions and so forth. And at one point, I decided to ask the manager, does the organization have like what's known as a quality policy or environmental policy? And kind of looked at me and started off on a tangent talking about all kinds of different things. And so I, listened a little bit, and then I asked a few questions about, is anything in it? Have you ever seen anything written down or anything that's been communicated to the organization type of thing? And said, no, not. Well, posted on a framed picture over his shoulder was the quality policy, an environmental policy that, was a big frame print. And it had no clue that was in their office, right? And so that led to some interesting questions about, what is management's responsibility? How do they communicate to the employees? What does it mean? Those types of things. So it kind of inside, kind of chuckling, but it was like, wow, okay. A person saw it every single day, and probably every time they went out of the office and came back in, but never realized it.
Yeah,
Like
sometimes
overwhelming management commitment, huh?
right. Just the background, right?
Just the back. Yep.
But one of the most important things when we're talking about the examples that Richard made just about the quality policy is in about 4 to 5 years, it started people printed everything, the policy in the IDs, put in the screen, in the whiteboards, wherever. But the most important is not to see the policy, that everyone in the company, they must explain how implement the quality policy. Just show me. I don't want that you just read the policy. I don't care the policy. It's a paper. The idea is show me how you participate in every moment in your daily job, how you are implemented the quality policy or prove if it's effective or not. It's as easy as that one. But the people that start making more complex the ISO, when the ISO, the idea is to be easygoing. It's almost now it's no paper. So the idea is facts, to show facts, and we don't have to request everything writing. Just it's better to show me how you apply. Like it's one of the best benefits that the ISO is bringing from the new 2015.
Well, we're starting to get some good questions coming in from the audience. And this is one that I'm sure none of you have ever encountered. So I want to know how you might handle it if you ever did. I'm kidding. But have you ever experienced situations in which the audit client disagreed with the audit findings? And how were those situations handled? Like I said, I'm sure you've never encountered that situation
That never
before.
happened.
So who wants to start on that one?
Well, in that situation, yes, we've all had that occur.
In every.
And yeah, almost every audit, right? So the important thing here is to make sure there's an auditor that you explain to the auditee or the employee that's questioning it, and show them what is the requirement, right? And then what is the objective evidence or lack of the evidence that shows that it is, not in conformance with the requirement? And it can be, their own requirement. And many times you find that, in the preparation for conducting the audit, going through and getting familiar with the system, you'll find things that they may not be familiar with. So you really have to show them, where it is, and you have to be confident in what you're saying too, that, really is, let's say, a non-conformance, and that they're disagreeing with you. That's very important.
I would like to specify a little bit more to clarify more the thing that Richard said. it's good that people, in some cases, disagree with the non-conformity. But the issue here is we must bring the right evidence to show not just the non-compliant, that is not in compliance with the process. See, the impact of the non-conformity. You see because every non-conformity, they must bring value to the organization. If we don't know how to bring down value, means it's better to make a observation. But we have to motivate the auditee when we got the non-conformity, that he figured out how was the impact if he stopped this non-conformity and correct non-conformity, since when has this non-conformity, and then make it to see the effectiveness. Okay, you have, for example, in this moment you have 3% rejection. That means about 20% less sales. Okay, but since when do you have this one? Because 6 months ago. And then the people when they see the impact of the non-conformity, they will be very pleased with the auditor, because we start giving value. That is one of the key issues now, to bring value for every non-conformity. And after that, the people start getting complaint, feel free, okay, because we don't have to fight. This is another issue. We don't have to fight for the non-conformity or to defend. Okay, just write down that you don't agree, and I will make my observation. And then that's why every CB, they have their own committee, they have to evaluate. That's important. We as auditor and you as auditee, we must document exactly and to accompany with all the evidence for if you accept it or you don't accept it, the non-conformity. I guess it can be good for you, for every one of the listeners.
If I may add a couple things, Mike, real quick.
Of course, of course.
I don't mind disagreements at all. I actually welcome the challenge, because I want to make sure that the client understands why they have a non-conformance and they understand the extent of it. Because if they don't understand it, they won't be able to generate a corrective action or do a proper root cause analysis, etc. So I usually come across there are either people who are not agreeing because either they didn't have enough knowledge about the standard or that specific requirement. They just want to understand. Or, of course, there's the type where they just want to challenge you because it's just a joy for them to challenge you. It's okay to be challenged professionally, but I would explain in different ways as much as I possibly could, and refer to the objective evidence and such. But if they still, at the end of the day, they choose to disagree, that's okay. There's an appeal process, especially if it's a registrar audit. Then it is what it is. So I wouldn't try to convince them that it's a finding, but I would just explain the extent of it, because the observation of the auditor, it is the observation of the auditor, right? So yeah, that's my take.
And in some cases, so for instance, it's some of the third party, auditing, where if you mentioned that, it might be an observation or something, some of the standards, for instance, AS9100, the auditing requirements, so forth, you can't issue a observation. It has to either be a major or minor. So you have to really be confident, as an auditor, that yes, the evidence or lack of evidence is sufficient to justify you writing, that. Otherwise, there isn't anything good. So if you do, in other situations, issue an observation, or sometimes called opportunities for improvement or full fees, you have to be a little bit careful, because that could turn into a non-conformance at some point in the future.
True.
We have a question here it's interesting. It's kind of the flip side of that other question I just asked. Have you ever made a mistake during an audit? And if so, what happened and how did you resolve it?
Never.
Next question.
No
No one wants to jump in on that, huh? Okay, all right, that's fine. I get it. That's fine. I can talk about some of the mistakes I've made. If anyone wants to hear those.
Yes, I've had a situation where let's say I've written a non-conformance, and then afterwards they came back with the objective evidence that showed that, oh yes, here it was. We just didn't know it, or they couldn't get to the, the file or something like that. And then after asking some questions, it became clear that, yes, it was just maybe just a slip of the mind or something like that. So then rescinded and revised the nonconformance. And it just said, corrected it, and that was it.
Mhm.
How about this one? This is a good one. Have you ever had a time when an auditee was not very cooperative? If so, what happened and how did you handle the situation?
Oh, I got one. I got
Okay.
one.
I have about 80.
Yeah, probably, right?
Sure,
Well,
jump in.
so this was another registrar certification audit. There was a problem with the organization because their certificate was suspended because they had falsified some information, and there was a big issue with the Environmental Protection Agency. Like a big public situation going on. So we were sent there to see if we can reinstate their certification. They changed management, etc. So again, it's a really gigantic corporation, and so we did the opening meeting, and we have probably about like 35 people, members of the management team, and they hired this new environmental health and safety director, who is this huge guy, and like he has this attitude, like he's mad, he's so mad, but I mean, like you can see smoke coming out, so mad. So the audit was supposed to be for 5 full days. So I'm like, okay, this is gonna be fun. So whatever, like we discuss, he goes, it wasn't me. I wasn't here then. I wasn't here. It's not my fault. I'm like, no, it's not about, like, we're talking about system and all that. So anyways, to make a long story short, he offered it. He tried intimidation. It didn't work. He tried flattery. It didn't work. He tried, I mean, I'm not exaggerating. He offered us a job. That didn't work. He tried to hit on us. That didn't work. I'm like, so like a third or fourth day, I think, like I wanted to talk to him in his office. I'm like, you do understand we're going to finish this audit. Like, what's going on? And then he starts crying. But I mean, you can see I promise it's fake tears coming out. I care so much about this company. I'm like, oh my gosh, you have got to be kidding me. So then finally comes like mid fourth day or something. He comes in and says, you know what, Mel, I give up. Write whatever finding you're gonna write. I'll be fine. I'm like, well, I was gonna write them anyways. I just wish you had the same attitude so we wouldn't have had this whole roller coaster drama throughout the week. Thanks a lot, and have a good day.
You got a good story out of it, though.
It was great. And then I kept going back there for like a few more years. So we became good friends, and I never make him forget that incident. I'm like, you cried. He's like, no, yeah, you did. It was awesome.
That's great.
That's a good one.
That's a great one. Oh boy. All right. Let me ask you this. So with the current ISO standards not requiring much in terms of documented info, how do clients prove they have considered something like risk/interested parties /exterior/internal issues? Marco, what do you think of that one?
Well, first of all, it's a very hard topic to people understand that one. It's the first one that we have to convince how. The most important is is to talk about preventive for in every one of these stages. You have to remove the word preventive. But when we start teaching or they start implementing the risk, most of the time they make a very nice risk matrix. But it's a fake risk matrix because they didn't ask to the customers or to the interested parties what are the objectives, what are requirements in order to create the potential risk in every one of the sections. So when we start auditing, they say, okay, show me the evidence. And obviously they don't have the evidence. And the second hard, they go into the 6.1 from the 3 standards is how you measure the effectiveness of the how to control your level of risk from 50 to 20. Just as they put a paper with they use in some cases the AMEF format, the failure model effect analysis, but nobody measured during the period of 3 months or 6 months if the corrective action or the controls that they put into the risk are effective or not. That is, I guess, the 80% of the companies, they don't know how to implement risk assessment, and they don't know how to see really, if you talk preventive since the beginning, it's going to transform into the benefits immediately. But they don't have the catch. That is, I guess, every certification body, every certified training provider, we have to work so hard in order to understand, to let them know how to understand in the easy way how to create the first matrix of risk assessment, to be preventive and to control and to measure. That's why the KPI start for every one of the risks that they have. They have a stronger, not stronger, or light risk. So that is the way that we have to work, because it's not understandable, I guess, for 80% of the companies. In my experience, I raise a non-conformity, or in some cases I raise a opportunity for improve, because they make the table, they try to know, but when it's more, when they ask, nobody read the annex of the standards. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. So, well, why you don't go to the annex? It's here. That's why we make the annex. But it doesn't exist, just exists. They copy and paste the manual, they take the index and they paste. That is not the idea. So I guess it's a good tool that we have to work more. Everybody has to work more to be more easy going in the way that we teach and express, with an easy way to maintain every risk matrix is alive. That means that every time, like with the COVID come and affect all the companies. So you have to remake your risk assessment, and to see what will happen, and to be alert always to all the interested parties. That's why it's important, the concept interested parties, because it's not, in some cases, it's not my customer. The people believe that it's the only interested party and vendors. No. The society, or like the virus was affected all over the world. So that is why some companies, they make a good risk assessment. I was totally surprised, because when the COVID come, they could control, and they didn't lose too much time, and they didn't fire or they gave layout to many people. That is one of the benefits of the risk assessment, and to know what means interested parties.
You know what I come across sometimes in terms of risk assessment, like they don't necessarily understand the meaning of the terms, what it is exactly, since they don't go to annex and read it and everything, right? And like when you say risk, it's sometimes automatically assume that we're talking about occupational health and safety risk. Oh, we have no machine guarding. Well, no, we're talking about organizational risks that might come from all kinds of different things, whether it's internal, external issues, whether it's interested parties, your scope, your compliance obligations, whatnot, like because the standards now are precautionary tools, right? So the idea is to identify them at the beginning so that you can deal with them and you can mitigate the potential impacts of it. So that's one part. The second part I see also sometimes, like for organizations where they have corporate, headquarters or corporate department to manage the ISO programs, if it's translated, if it's interpreted the wrong way by corporate makes it mandatory down to the plans, do it in a certain way, which is wrong, but the plans have no choice. And then like, they don't know, like we write in on forms, they're like, well, corporate said so, corporate doesn't agree. So it could become a mess real quick, basically. That's what I noticed.
But I guess Richard can explain, because when we're talking about airspace, that is different, because we use a lot of risk in airspace. Since the beginning, it's plan A, plan B, plan C. Everything, something is wrong, we have to make another things in order to correct it. So I guess Richard can, I don't know if Richard, you have any, if you can share with us some experience like that.
Well, one of the, I think the big issues and problems that I see is the various standards and what they require. So for instance, the question related to, I think, risk, based thinking as opposed to risk management.
Mhm.
And, like Marco said, in the annex of 9001, so forth, it states that there's no need to have a risk management system unless you want one, but you have to have risk-based thinking. So I think people get confused about how to handle that and what does it really mean. And then some of the standards, for instance, in medical device, there's a requirement in a note, and it references the risk management ISO standard. So then people think that, well, we have to, implement those requirements. And no, it's in a note, so it's for information. So there's no requirement.
It's
So
not required.
there's no requirement that anyone has to implement that. It's a reference to it. So, then people go, in some cases, overboard based on, their experiences. So, like I say, as Marco was pointing out, in areas-based defense, you have to have risk management process in place for the operation, clause 8 of the standard. But you have risk-based thinking for everything outside of that,
Yeah.
right? So it's a matter of, the confusion between the two of them. So it has to be clear within an organization. And like Mel said, if what I see is corporations saying this is how you have to do it, and then they force it down to, either different facilities, and then it's kind of like overload, to them, and it doesn't make any sense, but they're doing it because corporate said we had to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's an interesting question. I want to see if I can interpret this properly, because there's two ways of interpreting this question. How do you handle when auditees provide conflicting evidence? And I'm not sure if the questioner means a single auditee provides different information at different times, or if separate people that you're auditing within the organization provide conflicting evidence. But regardless, maybe it's not. It's just that's not that important. But how do you handle that?
It's good. You say conflicted evidence.
Yeah, how do you handle when auditees provide conflicting evidence?
I have an example.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Drake.
I have an example. I was auditing an organization and was speaking to the supply chain manager, and we were talking about like supplier approval process. And this happened to be in a conference room, next to some offices. So I asked that, okay, I'd like to see some objective evidence of their supplier approval process and the reevaluation, right? So the supply chain manager left and came back with a stack of documents and put them on the table. The first one I pulled off, I went a couple pages, the information was blank. It wasn't filled out. And they said, oh, don't look at that one, and took it off the top of the pile. And I kind of said, well, okay, a little bit too late, but let's take a look at it and why. So, here there was the explanation of how the system worked. And then the first one on the stack of papers that came out didn't agree with what they did. And of course, there were some others in there also so it was just a matter of, okay, listen to what the, verbal communication was, and then showing me the objective evidence, and it didn't agree.
And how'd you reconcile it?
Yeah.
Oh, it turned out to be a non-conformance.
Oh.
Because, from the documentation he showed, it just wasn't following their procedure, their process. And it was obvious that they weren't doing it. And I think that when the supply chain manager left, they went and kind of culled the data
To fill it up.
rather than going, watching them pull it out and so forth. But it was there.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes they also, like for the same very process, they create too many different documents where the documents do not communicate with each other. Like, for example, emergency preparedness and response processes, right? They created, say, emergency response action plan, emergency procedure. There is hazardous waste emergency, which covers fire emergency along with 3 other documents. So, and then you're asking for, okay, so did you do some drills? One document says, okay, you have to do 2 drills a year. The other one says something else, and then nobody knows what's happening. So then that becomes a problem, right? So that's why I always say, lean documentation is the best way to go. Know, first of all, whatever processes you're going to have, know how you're doing this process, how you're implementing it in practice, first of all, so you don't just come up with fancy procedures and leave it right there. And then just be aware of every kind of documentation that refers to that process, and make sure they're compatible with each other. They communicate and they're conformant to each other. So I see that quite often. I don't know about you guys, you probably do too.
Well, one of my examples that I would put is, I was one of my auditors making in the automotive industry evaluation, and I heard they start fighting my audit with the auditor. And then one of the guys said, hey, you are the lead auditor? Yes, we have some problems there. What's happened? No, because they are dealing, because your auditor, they ask you for secret information. We cannot give secret information. What? It's not secret. Let's see. So we went to see the area. It was like a secret information, was the know-how of the company from one formula. And my auditor wants, show me the formula to see if you are in compliance or not, if it's effective or not. So in those cases, let's say, no, wait, you can give me the inputs and the outputs. And we call this type of process, we call it a black box. It's a black box because it's your know-how. You don't have to give me, but yes, you have to give me the inputs and the outputs, and I will see the effectiveness of the input and the outputs. And in this case, I don't have to raise a non-conformity because you have to prove. You cannot prove this one, I will get a non-conformity. So finally, but my auditor was not happy for that. It's mandatory, You know how many years of, if somebody get this information, you can sell to another company. It's an industrial secret. So the auditors, we don't have the obligation to push to the auditing to show secrets. So they have to declare as like a black box or another expression, like a confidential information. In this case, leave like this, and you have to ask the inputs and output. But there was a big conflict when in the moment first to come down, because the audit has to be nice audit. It has to be the audit against the auditor. We have to change this way of thinking. We came as auditor because they pay us to make the audit. So just we have to bring value to this one. But yes, it's very important. Any secret that a company has, they don't have to show to the auditor. They can see the inputs and output. This is the idea, and I guess it's the benefits of this comment that I offer to everyone, to you. Thank you.
All right, well, I think we have time for 1 or 2 more. But if you guys do have one, quick question that you want to get in, viewers, you can still send them to us in the discussion forum box. And if we don't get to your question, we'll certainly keep them on hand and send them to our panelists later. So here's a question I think is an interesting one. Which is easier to audit and why? A large organization in terms of the people, the assets, etc., or a small one? It's an interesting question. Mel, what do you think?
I think large one is easier. I mean, they both have, I guess, pros and cons, right? But like, in terms of the standards, you kind of have to audit every single clause anyways, whether it's a small organization or a large one. And I don't know, I find it kind of, maybe I'm used to it more. I don't know, I find it much easier to audit the larger ones. They're usually more, maybe more systematic, well, relatively speaking. But yeah, that's what I think.
I don't have a preference. doing the audits, basically it's based upon processes. So as Marco was talking, now you're looking at the inputs, the outputs, the, controls, resources on it. So to me, it doesn't matter whether it's a small organization or a large organization. Some companies say, brother, sister, wonderful business, right? And, you have to do an audit of it. It's no different than if it were a large organization auditing the same processes that apply. So I really don't have a preference.
Yeah, me too. And the typical evidence is when we're talking about big organization, everybody, the responsible is the corporate.
Yeah.
Always say, no, this is the corporate say that one, we have to follow. But I get the non-conformity to you because I came to it. So if it's not conformity, I will rise to you. No, but the corporate say, okay, we're going to share this non-conformity with your corporate. But let's go procedures. Is your system, that's why we call it the interested parties. Your corporate is part of your interested parties, but you are the owner of your process, so you have to know exactly what's happening. That is in the corporate. And in the small business, like you say, they have a multi-hat. This is another issue. They do everything.
Exactly.
So in some cases, you have to understand, you will not see procedures, but just ask him if they know. Either we don't have any procedures, they know, they repeat the same, and you go with the cousin, okay, tell me how you made this process. And they answer, that is enough. Because it's a small community. So the most important is how effective it is, and the people they must know, and you must measure as an auditor the commitment of the people. With the commitment, you can do everything.
Sure.
And we as auditor, excuse me, you as auditor, we can have mistakes as auditor, like we said before, because in some cases, we are. Instead to go in a nice way, we go like a typical bookkeeper auditor from the government. Show me that one. You have to do this one. I will give you that one. Come on. So,
yeah. Just to clarify, I'm not saying I prefer auditing large clients. I mean, I appreciate every client and I try to add value as much as I possibly can as an auditor to each client. But I'm just saying it feels kind of as if it was easier to audit the larger corporations for some reason. But either way, all clients is, every client is appreciated. And yeah, so.
All right, we have a few minutes left. I want to end with this one because this is one that I think is a really important one. I think it's probably almost to a certain extent one of the most important parts of this function. How often do you hand out majors, and what in your mind tips the scale to make something a major finding? That's interesting to me. What would you say? Anyone have any feelings about that? How you decide what's major and what's minor?
Okay, woman first. Mel.
Well, okay, sure. Put me on the spot.
I'm the last one because I'm the old one.
Well, first of all,
right.
is
I'll
it cut and
take it.
dry? I guess that's the first question. Is it
I'll
really
take
cut and
it.
dry, or is it a judgment call?
Well, it may not always be, easy to kind of judge, but okay, so major is like, I want to say there's a pattern, like how often you would do a major. It depends on each process, the circumstance of the auditee's, situation. But if you notice a whole corruption on that process, like they didn't implement it, they didn't establish it, they didn't maintain it, nothing exists. Like say management review, they didn't do a management review. So that's an easy major, right? Or like you would look at certain things. For example, the risk would be too high on maybe if you're doing ISO 45001 audit and there's like a extremely high risk health and safety, it could be a fatal situation that could become an operational control major, things like that. And then, or maybe like if you see small patterns of the same process and throughout the facility, in like everywhere, wherever you go, you see the same problem of the same process distributed throughout, that could show a pattern combined and lead into a major also. So did I do well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Typically, for, Major, when you look at the processes and the audits, I go back to the inputs and outputs. So the output from one process is the input for the next process. So if that output, when you're doing the audit, isn't right, it's going to affect the next process as their input. They're not going to be able to, do what they're supposed to do, correctly. And then it just keeps going all the way through. And then the customer winds up, external customer winds up with it, and that's a problem. So in situations where you find that it's internally, it's going to affect the next process, that's a major. And if it did impact the next process, it's a major. And certainly if the customer received it, then that's a major nonconformance. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I agree. For example, we're talking about safety and environment. If you can put in jeopardize the person, the life of one person, is a major. So, or if you can stop all the process and you repeat the customer. What most important here is, one is don't damage the customer business. One, the second, that is not very often, but don't put in jeopardize the profits of the company. That was internal major, because in some cases we don't care as auditor, is more to protect the customer, the customers. But one of the customer internally is the stockholders. Now that we emphasize in stakeholders, so that can be either internally and another major no conformity.
Well, gentlemen and lady, thank you all so much for those great questions. That's unfortunately the end of our session today, but I want to thank all of you, Mel DeGregorio, Rick Litz, Marco Pardave. Thank you all for joining us. A really great session. I hope all of you out there listening got your questions answered. We still have a few more in the queue, but we'll get them out to our panelists, and we'll get those answers out to you. So thank you all for joining us. And before we go, I want to flip back over to my handy spreadsheet, or my handy PowerPoint. I think I have it up. There we go. Whoop. All right, I got there. Our next live session is going to be a week from today, which is June 23rd at 6 p.m. in New York Eastern Time, or 8 a.m. on the 24th in Sydney. So please check us out and join us for that one. That's on Simulator, introducing Simulator, an interesting new audit tool. So you want to tune in for that one, coming up a week from today, as I mentioned. And please remember to purchase your CPD certificate to this session from today that you joined us for. So thanks again to you all for joining us. Thank you again, Mel, Rick, and Marco, for being here. And we'll see you next time here at the Online Auditor Expo.
Thank you.
Good morning. Because right now it's 3 in the morning.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
You're welcome.